am here with Stephen King, one of the most prodigious authors of his time, here to discuss his memoir on writing. Mr. King, thank you for allowing me this interview.
Well, thank you, and you can call me Stephen.
I'd first like to ask you, where did you get your start in writing?
Oh gosh, as a child I loved comic books. I read so many comics. And of course my mom then encouraged me to write stories and whatnot. So at the age of 6 I wrote my first story, I believe, but I can't recall the title. Then later I edited a bit of a parody newspaper for my school, but that earned me quite a bit of infamy and whatnot. But I wasn't terribly satisfied with journalism. But those were the earliest sort of attempts at writing.
Infamous? What made you infamous?
Yes, the village rag. I mocked my teachers, and of course they didn't appreciate that.
Tell me more about your childhood.
Well, I was a very sickly child, so I missed quite a bit of school. That's why I spent so much time reading comics and whatnot. I had nothing better to do. I suffered from ear infections, and the doctors would, of course, lance my ears. And
what was your first published work?
that would be In a Half Night of Terror. I wrote it at the age of 11, I believe. Nothing terribly significant, but my first successful published work was certainly Carrie. So I wrote that as a young college professor struggling to make ends meet.
Did you think Carrie would be successful?
Well, I never thought it would sell, but it did for $400,000. Now, of course, half of that went to my producer, but $200,000 is quite a bit of money, and it allowed me to quit my job as a professor. Actually, I had thrown the manuscript in a trash can, and my wife, Tabitha, plucked it from the trash and read it and said, "Oh, this is quite good. You know, with a bit of editing and whatnot, we can make something of this." And
tell me more about your wife, Tabitha.
well, we've been married for 43 years. We met in college. It's probably correct to say that all of my writing is an attempt to impress her. But I love her very much, and she edits my work. Her advice is always great, always excellent, always meaningful.
Describe a typical day in the life of Stephen King.
Well, I spend my mornings writing. I advise that if a person wishes to become an excellent writer, a person ought to write 2,000 words per day. I know that seems like quite a bit. Then during the afternoon I read letters from the people who read my books. It's great encouragement. And then at night I spend time with my family.
Describe your writing environment.
Well, I generally shut my door and listen to very loud rock music. So I blare AC/DC and Guns N' Roses and whatnot.
Now, if you were to give any other authors advice, what would you tell them?
To the extent possible, avoid adverbs. I can't stand it. I read these novels, and the ideas are very interesting, but instead of simply using an interesting and fitting verb, they feel the need to always attach an adverb to some bland verb. So instead of writing, they will write, "She walked quickly to the store," or something, rather than "she scurried to the store," which is more interesting and more efficient.
Do you have any other tips for aspiring novelists?
I do, in my memoir. But truly, no, I think the most important thing is reading. Reading is fundamental. A person cannot write well if he doesn't read well. And then, of course, practicing writing, obviously, is necessary.
Were there any low points in your career?
Yes. In the 1980s, I struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. Of course, thankfully, because of an intervention, I've since overcome that. But, for example, I can't recall writing Cujo. You know, I was so drunk frequently, I simply don't remember.
I understand that you were involved in a car accident. Tell me about it.
Well, as you know, I live in New England, and New England is filled with shaded, winding roads. So I was strolling one day along the roadside, and a van simply struck me and shattered my kneecap. I broke my leg in 9 places. I broke 4 of my ribs. It was terrible. And of course, recovery was very difficult. But I used that opportunity to finish writing my memoir, which was only the second project I had left aside. And But of course the accident provided the motivation.
Well, Mr. King, I'd like to... Stephen. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to conduct this interview.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
No, it was my pleasure.